Commander Jake Morrison sat at his desk and stared at the report in front of him. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. The words on the screen made no sense to him, even though he had read them 5 times already. Mission: Report Cadet Lucy Harper. Objective: Eliminate Shadow Maw threat on Tertius 7. Status: Complete. Notes: Threat neutralized through alternative methods. Creature now residing in Academy compound. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked out the window of his office. In the courtyard below, he could see exactly what those alternative methods had produced. A massive black creature the size of a small building was lying on its side in the sunshine. Several maintenance workers were using its broad back as a platform while they fixed a broken light panel. The creature's huge yellow eyes were half closed in what looked like contentment. This was the Shadow Maw. According to every report Jake had ever read, these creatures were supposed to be vicious predators that could tear through steel with their claws and read minds to hunt their prey. Yet this one was letting tiny humans climb all over it while it napped in the sun. Jake pressed a button on his desk. Send in Cadet Harper. A few minutes later, Lucy Harper walked into his office. She was a young woman from one of Earth's farming colonies with sun-bleached hair and calloused hands. She looked nervous but not afraid. Sit down, Lucy, Jake said. I want you to tell me exactly what happened on Tertius 7. Lucy sat in the chair across from his desk. Well, sir, I went to the mining station like you ordered. They told me the Shadow Maw had been attacking their equipment and scaring the workers. And then I tracked it to a cave about 2 miles from the main site. It was hiding in the dark and I could hear it making these soft crying sounds. Lucy paused and looked down at her hands. It didn't sound like a monster, sir. It sounded sad. Jake leaned forward. Sad? Yes, sir. So instead of shooting it, I just sat down outside the cave and waited. After about an hour, it came out to look at me. It was skinny, sir. Really skinny. Its ribs were showing through its fur. The reports said it was a massive, well-fed predator. Lucy shook her head. No, sir, it was starving. So I gave it my lunch. Some protein bars and dried fruit. It ate everything so fast like it hadn't had food in weeks. Jake made a note on his tablet. Then what? Well, I couldn't just leave it there to starve. So I called the mining station and asked them what they'd been doing differently lately. Turns out they'd been using some new drilling equipment that made a lot of noise underground. The vibrations had scared away all the small animals that the Shadow Maw usually hunted. So you solved their problem by feeding their predator? Lucy looked confused. It wasn't really a predator, sir. I mean, it could be if it had to, but mostly, it just wanted to be left alone to hunt small cave rats. Once I explained the situation to the mining crew, they agreed to use the quiet drilling equipment during the day and save the loud stuff for nighttime when the small animals weren't active. Anyway, Jake sat back in his chair. And the creature just followed you back here? Well, not right away, but I spent 3 days with it, sharing my food and just talking. I know it couldn't understand my words, but it seemed to like the sound of my voice. When I finally had to leave, it looked so lonely that I asked if it wanted to come with me. Lucy smiled. It's actually very gentle, sir. It just needed a friend. After Lucy left, Jake pulled up 2 other files on his computer. Both showed the same pattern that was starting to worry the alien command staff. 6 months ago, Danny Rodriguez had been sent to Vega Prime to deal with a pack of crystal wolves that were supposedly terrorizing a research outpost. Danny had returned with all 6 wolves, which now lived in the Academy's security wing, and had proven to be excellent at detecting intruders and comforting homesick cadets. 3 months later, Amy Sullivan had been dispatched to handle a void serpent that was rampaging through a civilian settlement. Amy came back with the serpent coiled peacefully around her shuttle. The creature now lived wrapped around the Academy's central tower, where it seemed to enjoy watching the sunrise each morning. And now Lucy Harper had turned a fearsome Shadow Maw into what appeared to be the galaxy's largest therapy animal. Jake's door chimed and he looked up to see Commander Vextal standing in the doorway. The Zenthari officer was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes that never seemed to blink. His species was known for their logical approach to problems and their dislike of unpredictable situations. Commander Morrison, Vextal said, in his careful, precise voice. We need to discuss the human problem. Problem? Jake stood up. I'd hardly call successfully completing missions a problem. Vextal entered the office and closed the door behind him. These missions were designed to test the cadets' ability to eliminate threats quickly and efficiently. Instead, your humans keep adopting them. Maybe that says something about the threats themselves, or it says something about human judgment. Vextal moved to the window and looked down at the Shadow Maw, which was now being petted by a group of young alien cadets. My species has been dealing with dangerous creatures for thousands of years. We know how to classify threats properly. Jake joined him at the window. Do you? Because from where I'm standing it looks like your proper classification might be wrong. Vextal turned his large eyes toward Jake. You think we have been mistaken about creatures that have killed thousands of beings across the galaxy? I think maybe you've been looking at the symptoms instead of the causes. Jake gestured toward the courtyard. Lucy didn't tame that creature through some kind of human magic. She just paid attention to what it actually needed instead of what she expected it to be. And what about the safety of other beings? What happens when one of these misunderstood creatures reverts to its true nature? Before Jake could answer, his communication device beeped. He glanced at the screen and felt his stomach drop. What is it? Vextal asked. Another incident. Cadet Ryan Parker was sent to deal with a quantum leviathan near the Sigma-12 research station. Jake looked up from the device. His shuttle just docked, and according to sensors, he's not alone. Vextal's gray skin seemed to grow even paler. A quantum leviathan? Those creatures are larger than battleships. They can phase through solid matter and have been known to destroy entire space stations. Jake was already heading for the door. Then we better go see what Ryan's done with it. They made their way quickly through the Academy's corridors, past classrooms where young beings from dozens of different species were learning about space navigation, alien cultures, and tactical combat. The Academy had been built as a place where the galaxy's future leaders could learn to work together, but lately it felt more like a zoo for impossible creatures. They reached the docking bay just as Ryan Parker was walking down the ramp from his shuttle. He was a tall young man with dark hair and an easy smile, and he looked completely relaxed despite having just returned from what should have been a life-threatening mission. Behind him, floating silently in the docking bay, was something that should not have been possible. The quantum leviathan was massive, its translucent body shimmering as it phased in and out of solid matter. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like a whale made of starlight and shadow. Report, Cadet, Vextal said, his voice tight. With barely controlled panic, Ryan saluted casually. Mission accomplished, sir. The research station is safe. And the creature? Ryan glanced back at the Leviathan, which was now floating peacefully near the ceiling of the docking bay. Oh, that's Melody. She was just trying to help, but nobody could understand what she wanted. Turns out the research station's reactor was about to blow, and she was trying to warn them. Once we fixed the problem, she offered to give everyone a ride to safety. Ryan grinned. She's actually really friendly once you get to know her. Jake and Vextal stared up at the impossible sight of a quantum leviathan floating calmly in their docking bay like an enormous otherworldly pet. This, Vextal said quietly, is becoming a very serious problem. Lieutenant Commander Pete Carter walked through the Academy halls with a heavy feeling in his chest. Commander Morrison had given him a job that seemed impossible. He needed to figure out why human cadets kept making friends with dangerous creatures instead of fighting them. The alien teachers were getting more worried each day, and some were starting to talk about removing humans from the program entirely. Pete stopped outside the security wing where Danny Rodriguez worked with his pack of crystal wolves. Through the glass door, he could see Danny brushing the silver fur of the largest wolf while two smaller ones played with a group of young alien cadets. The scene looked peaceful, nothing like the reports he had read about vicious predators. He pressed the door button and walked inside. Danny looked up from his work and smiled. Commander Carter, good to see you. What brings you down here? Pete pulled out his tablet and sat down on a nearby bench. One of the smaller wolves came over and sniffed his hand before lying down at his feet. I need to ask you about your mission to Vega Prime, the one where you encountered these wolves. Danny set down his brush and gave the large wolf a gentle pat. Sure thing. What do you want to know? The official report says you were sent to eliminate a pack of dangerous predators that were attacking a research station, but you brought them back instead. I need to understand why. Danny was quiet for a moment, scratching behind the ear of the wolf beside him. Have you ever been to Vega Prime, Commander? No, I haven't. It's a mining planet. Lots of big machines, lots of noise, lots of digging. The research station was built right on top of what used to be a forest. Danny gestured to his wolves. These guys lived in that forest for thousands of years. They had dens, hunting grounds, safe places for their babies. Pete made notes on his tablet. But they were attacking the station. They were protecting their cubs. Danny stood up and walked to a large window that looked out onto a grassy area where several young wolves were playing. When I got there, I didn't see vicious predators. I saw parents who were scared and desperate. The mining equipment had destroyed their dens and buried their food sources. They were starving and their babies were in danger. So what did you do? I watched them for 2 days before I made contact. I wanted to understand what they were really doing. Danny pointed to the largest wolf. That's Alpha. He's the pack leader. I saw him risk his own life to save a cub that had fallen into one of the mining pits. Does that sound like a mindless killer to you? Pete looked at Alpha, who was now lying peacefully in a patch of sunlight. No, it doesn't. Once I realized what was really happening, I contacted the research station and explained the situation. We worked out a deal. The station provided food and safe shelter for the wolves, and in return, the wolves would help with security. Turns out they're amazing at detecting intruders and dangerous equipment failures. Danny knelt down and scratched Alpha behind the ears. These aren't monsters, Commander. They're intelligent social creatures who care about their families. All they needed was someone to listen to them instead of just shooting first. Pete spent another hour with Danny, learning about wolf behavior and pack dynamics. When he finally left, he had filled several pages with notes and had a completely different understanding of what had happened on Vega Prime. His next stop was the central tower where Amy Sullivan was working on advanced navigation training. He found her on the observation deck, checking star charts while the void serpent coiled peacefully around the tower's exterior. The massive creature's scales caught the light from the nearby star, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. Amy, do you have a few minutes to talk? Amy looked up from her charts and smiled. Of course, Commander. Let me guess. You want to know about Luna? She gestured toward the window where they could see the serpent's massive head resting against the glass. Luna? That's what I call her. She reminded me of the moon back on Earth, the way she glows in the starlight. Amy walked to the window and placed her hand against the glass. The serpent's huge eye opened and seemed to focus on her with obvious affection. Pete pulled out his tablet again. The reports said she was rampaging through a civilian settlement, destroying buildings, terrorizing the population. Amy laughed softly. She was dancing. Dancing. Void serpents are solitary creatures most of the time, but once every few years they need to find a mate. Luna was performing a mating dance, trying to attract a partner. The problem was that the settlement had been built right in the middle of her traditional dancing ground. Pete made more notes. But the damage to the buildings? Void serpents are huge, Commander. When you're that big, it's hard to dance without bumping into things. Luna wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was just following instincts that were millions of years old. Amy turned away from the window. The settlers saw a giant creature moving through their town and assumed the worst. They never stopped to wonder why she was moving in such a specific pattern, or why she kept making those musical sounds. Musical sounds? Amy nodded and pulled up a recording on her tablet. Listen to this. The sound that came from the device was unlike anything Pete had ever heard. It was deep and haunting, but also beautiful. It reminded him of whale songs, but more complex and emotional. That's Luna calling for a mate. It's actually quite romantic, when you understand what it means. Amy smiled as she watched the serpent through the window. Once I figured out what she was really doing, I was able to help her find a partner. There was another void serpent about 50 light years away who had been looking for her. They're together now and they have 3 babies. Pete looked up from his notes. She has babies? Luna comes to visit them every few weeks. She's a wonderful mother, very gentle and protective. The settlement actually loves having her around now. She helps with heavy construction work, and her babies are amazing at finding lost objects with their phase-shifting abilities. After talking with Amy for another hour, Pete made his way to the medical wing where Lucy Harper was finishing her mission debriefing. He found her in the break room sharing a meal with the Shadow Maw. The massive creature was carefully eating protein bars with its huge claws while Lucy told it about her day. "Lucy, can I interrupt for a moment?" Lucy looked up and nodded. "Sure, Commander. Midnight doesn't mind." She scratched the creature under its chin and it made a sound like a giant cat purring. "Midnight? That's what I call him. His fur is so black it reminds me of Midnight back home." Lucy offered Pete a chair. "I heard you're investigating all of us troublemakers." Pete sat down and pulled out his tablet, which was now nearly full of notes. "I'm trying to understand what really happened on your missions, starting with Tertius 7. Lucy was quiet for a moment, feeding Midnight another protein bar. "Have you ever been really hungry, Commander? I mean, so hungry you couldn't think about anything else?" "I've missed a few meals, but nothing serious. I grew up on a farming colony. We had some bad years when the crops failed. I remember what it felt like to go to bed hungry night after night." Lucy's voice was soft, but there was pain in it. "When I found Midnight in that cave, I recognized that hunger. It was in his eyes, in the way he moved. He wasn't a monster. He was just a scared, starving animal." Pete made more notes. "But the mining station reported attacks. Midnight was trying to hunt the small animals that lived around the mining equipment. The bright lights and warm engines attracted cave rats and tunnel mice, but the miners saw a big predator near their equipment and assumed he was going to attack them." Lucy scratched Midnight's massive head, and the creature closed its eyes in contentment. "The funny thing is, once the miners understood what was really happening, they started leaving out food scraps for the small animals in a different area. Midnight followed his food source away from the equipment, and everyone was happy." "And he just decided to come with you?" Lucy smiled. "I think he was lonely. Shadow Maws usually live in family groups, but Midnight had been alone for years. When I showed him kindness, he bonded with me like I was his pack." She looked at the creature fondly. "He's actually incredibly intelligent. He can sense people's emotions and knows when someone is upset or afraid. The other cadets love him." Pete spent the rest of the afternoon with Lucy and Midnight, learning about Shadow Maw, behavior and social structure. By evening, his tablet was full of information that painted a very different picture than the official reports. That night, Pete sat in his office reviewing all his notes. 3 different missions, 3 different species, but the same pattern, every time. The human cadets had looked beyond the surface behavior to understand what the creatures really needed. They had seen fear instead of aggression, loneliness instead of malice, natural behavior instead of random violence. He pulled up the Academy's xenobiology database and started cross-referencing his findings with the official species classifications. What he found made his stomach turn. Page after page of creatures classified as hostile or dangerous, based on limited observations and second-hand reports. Very few of the entries showed evidence of serious study or attempts at communication. Pete realized that the Academy had been sending cadets out to fight enemies that didn't exist. The real problem wasn't dangerous creatures. The meeting room was packed with alien officers from 12 different species. Commander Vextal sat at the head of the long table, his gray skin looking even paler than usual. Beside him, Lieutenant Hurdock from the Corvin military shifted nervously in his chair. The air in the room felt heavy with tension. Pete Carter stood at the front of the room with his tablet in hand. He had spent all night preparing his report, and now he had to convince these worried officers that everything they believed about dangerous creatures was wrong. "Commanders," Pete began, "I have completed my investigation into the human cadet incidents. What I found will surprise you." Commander Vexatel leaned forward. Lieutenant Commander Carter, before you begin, we have another situation to discuss. He pressed a button on the table, and a holographic display appeared showing Ryan Parker's latest mission report. Cadet Parker was sent to eliminate a phase panther that was terrorizing a cargo station near the Epsilon sector. As you can see from these images, he has returned with the creature as a companion. The hologram showed Ryan walking through the academy halls with a large cat-like creature beside him. The phase panther was beautiful, with silver fur that seemed to shimmer and fade in and out of visibility. It walked calmly next to Ryan, occasionally brushing against his hand like a house cat seeking attention. This is the fourth incident, Vextal continued. 4 missions, 4 creatures that should have been eliminated, 4 new pets living in our academy. The Council has decided that humans lack the proper judgment for these types of missions. Pete took a deep breath. Commander, with respect, I believe the problem is not with human judgment. The problem is with our understanding of these creatures. A Corvin officer near the back of the room made a harsh clicking sound. You suggest that centuries of xenobiology research is wrong? I suggest that we have been making assumptions based on fear instead of facts. Pete activated his own hologram display. Let me show you what I discovered. The first image showed Danny Rodriguez's mission report alongside video footage of the crystal wolves protecting their cubs. The crystal wolves were not attacking randomly. They were defending their young from mining equipment that was destroying their home. The next image showed Amy Sullivan's report with audio recordings of the Void Serpent's mating calls. The Void Serpent was not rampaging. She was performing a natural mating dance in her traditional territory. The third image showed Lucy Harper with the Shadow Maw, including medical scans that clearly showed the creature's malnourished state. The Shadow Maw was not hunting humans. It was starving because human activity had scared away its normal food sources. Pete looked around the room at the silent officers. In each case, the creature's behavior had a logical explanation. The humans succeeded because they took the time to understand what was really happening, instead of simply reacting to what they expected to see. Commander Vextal's large black eyes studied the data. Even if your analysis is correct, Lieutenant Commander, it does not change the fact that these creatures are potentially dangerous. A starving Shadow Maw is still capable of killing. So is a scared human, Pete replied. But we do not classify all humans as monsters because some might become dangerous under extreme circumstances. The room erupted in concerned chatter from the various alien officers. Pete waited for them to quiet down before continuing. I request permission to interview Cadet Parker about his latest mission. I believe his experience will support my findings. Vextal considered this for a moment. Very well. Bring him in. A few minutes later, Ryan Parker entered the room with the phase panther walking calmly beside him. The alien officers instinctively moved back in their chairs, but the creature showed no signs of aggression. It simply sat down next to Ryan and began grooming its silver fur. Cadet Parker, Vextal said carefully, please explain how you managed to survive an encounter with a phase panther. Ryan looked confused. Survive? Commander, Whisper never tried to hurt me. She was trying to ask for help. Whisper? That's what I call her. She makes these soft whisper sounds when she's happy. Ryan reached down and scratched behind the panther's ears. The creature made a sound like wind through leaves and leaned into his touch. Pete stepped forward. Ryan, tell us exactly what happened when you arrived at the cargo station. Well, the station manager was really upset. He said the phase panther had been appearing and disappearing all over the station, scaring the workers and interfering with operations. Some cargo had gone missing and everyone assumed the panther was stealing it. Ryan paused to pet Whisper, who had started purring. But when I tracked her down, I noticed something strange. She was not randomly appearing and disappearing. She was following a specific pattern, always showing up in the same areas. What kind of pattern? Pete asked. She kept appearing near the air recycling systems and the waste disposal units, places where the station's environmental systems were located. Ryan smiled. It took me a while to figure out what she was trying to show me. Commander Vextal leaned forward. Show you? The station's air recycling system was failing. There was a slow leak of toxic gas that the station's sensors had not detected yet. Whisper's species can smell toxins that most other beings cannot. She was trying to warn the station crew before they all got sick. The room fell silent. Pete made notes on his tablet while the alien officers exchanged uncertain glances. "And the missing cargo?" asked Lieutenant Hurdock. Whisper had moved it away from the areas where the toxic gas was building up. She was trying to protect the station's supplies. Ryan looked around the room at the worried faces. "Once we fixed the air recycling system, she stopped appearing in those areas. The station manager was so grateful that he offered her a permanent job as a safety inspector." Pete turned to face the assembled officers. "This supports everything I found in my investigation. These creatures are not monsters. They are intelligent beings responding to their environment in ways that make perfect sense once we understand their perspective." Commander Vextal was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Even if we accept your analysis, Lieutenant Commander, there are creatures in the galaxy that are genuinely dangerous, creatures that cannot be reasoned with or befriended." Several officers nodded in agreement. Pete had expected this objection. "Commander, I would like to propose a test." "What kind of test?" Pete took a deep breath. He knew this was risky, but it was the only way to prove his point. "Send a human cadet to encounter the most dangerous creature you can find. Something that everyone agrees is truly hostile and cannot be tamed." The room erupted in shocked voices. Several officers spoke at once, their words mixing into a confused jumble of concern and disbelief. Vextal raised his hand for silence. "You are suggesting we deliberately send a cadet into mortal danger?" "I am suggesting we test whether any creature is truly beyond understanding." Pete looked around the room. "If I am wrong, if there really are monsters that cannot be reached through communication and empathy, then you will have proven your point. But if I am right, we will have learned something important about how we classify and interact with other species." The alien officers began discussing the proposal among themselves. Pete heard fragments of conversation in various languages, most of them expressing doubt and concern. Finally, Commander Vextal called for order. "Lieutenant Commander Carter, your proposal is extremely dangerous. If we were to consider such a test, what creature would you suggest?" Pete had already thought about this. "The nightmare basilisk on Zarian 4. The room went completely silent. Even Whisper stopped purring and looked up with alert eyes. Lieutenant Hurdock was the first to speak. "The nightmare basilisk is considered the most dangerous creature in known space. Its psychic abilities can drive beings insane just by being near it. No expedition to Zarian 4 has ever returned." "Exactly," Pete said. "If a human cadet can successfully make contact with a nightmare basilisk, it will prove that communication and understanding can work with any species." Commander Vextal's hands shook slightly as he considered the proposal. "And if the cadet does not return? Then you will have your proof that some creatures truly are monsters, and the human program can be discontinued with justification." The debate that followed lasted for 3 hours. Officers argued about safety protocols, backup plans, and the ethics of sending someone on what might be a suicide mission. Some felt that proving Pete's theory was not worth risking a cadet's life. Others argued that understanding the true nature of dangerous creatures was essential for galactic safety. Finally, Vextal called for a vote. By a narrow margin, the council agreed to the test. "Very well," Vextal announced. "We will select a volunteer cadet for this mission. They will have the best equipment and all possible safety measures. But Lieutenant Commander Carter, if this goes wrong, the responsibility will be yours." Pete nodded. "I understand, Commander." 2 days later, Cadet Maria Santos volunteered for the mission. She was a quiet young woman from Earth's deep space colonies, known for her calm personality and excellent survival skills. As her shuttle prepared to depart for Zarion 4, the entire academy watched with a mixture of hope and dread. "Good luck, Maria," Pete said over the communication system. The docking bay was packed with nervous officers and cadets. Everyone at the academy had heard about Maria Santos and her impossible mission to Zarion 4. For 4 days, there had been no word from her shuttle. Many believed she was dead, killed by the most feared creature in known space. But now her shuttle was back, and the sensors showed she was not alone. Commander Jake Morrison stood next to Pete Carter, both men staring at the closed shuttle door. Behind them, Commander Vextall and a dozen other alien officers waited in tense silence. The Crystal Wolves sensed the tension and paced restlessly near their handler Danny Rodriguez. Even Midnight the Shadow Maw seemed worried, making low rumbling sounds from where he lay beside Lucy Harper. The shuttle door slowly opened with a soft hiss. Maria Santos stepped out, looking tired but unharmed. Her dark hair was messy and her uniform was wrinkled, but she was smiling. Behind her came something that should not have existed. The nightmare basilisk was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It moved like liquid shadow, its form shifting between solid and transparent. Its eyes glowed with a soft blue light that seemed both ancient and sad. The creature was larger than a horse but moved with grace, each step silent on the metal floor. Every alien in the docking bay took a step backwards. Some reached for weapons before remembering they were in a safe zone. The creature's presence filled the room with a strange energy that made everyone's skin tingle. But the most shocking thing was how the creature behaved. It stayed close to Maria, occasionally brushing against her arm like a cat seeking comfort. When she stopped walking, it stopped too. When she turned to face the crowd, it positioned itself protectively beside her. "Report, Cadet," Commander Morrison said, his voice steady despite his obvious shock. Maria straightened her shoulders and saluted. "Mission completed, sir. The threat to galactic shipping in the Zerion system has been resolved." "And the creature?" Vextall's voice was barely a whisper. Maria reached out and gently touched the basilisk's side. The creature made a sound like wind chimes mixed with whale song. "This is Harmony, sir, and she is not what we thought she was." Pete stepped forward, his tablet ready to record everything. "Maria, tell us what happened on Zerion 4. Maria took a deep breath. "Well, sir, the planet was exactly as horrible as the report said. Toxic atmosphere, dangerous radiation, constant electrical storms. I had to wear full environmental protection just to survive on the surface." She paused and looked at Harmony, who was watching the crowd with those glowing blue eyes. "I found the basilisk in a deep cave system about 50 miles from where I landed. The report said she would attack anyone who came near. But that is not what happened." "What did happen?" Pete asked. "When I entered the cave, I felt her presence. Immediately. It was like having someone else's thoughts pressing against my mind. But they were not angry thoughts or violent thoughts. They were sad thoughts. The loneliest thoughts I have ever felt." Maria's voice grew softer as she remembered. "She did not attack me, sir. She spoke to me." The room erupted in surprised voices. Commander Vextall raised his hand for silence. "Spoke to you?" "Nightmare basilisks do not have vocal cords." "Not with words, sir. With her mind. She is telepathic, but not in the way we thought. She does not force her thoughts into other minds to drive them crazy. She shares her feelings and memories." Maria walked closer to the group, with Harmony following silently beside her. "Sir, Harmony has been alone on that planet for over 300 years. Her species used to live in groups, but some kind of disaster killed all the others. She has been by herself all this time, calling out for someone, anyone, to talk to her." Pete made rapid notes on his tablet. "But the ships that disappeared near Zerion 4, the crews that went insane, Harmony was trying to communicate with them, but most species cannot handle telepathic contact if they are not prepared for it. When she reached out to share her loneliness and her memories, it overwhelmed their minds." Maria's voice filled with sympathy. "She did not mean to hurt anyone. She just wanted to talk to someone after centuries of silence." Commander Morrison stepped closer to examine the creature. Harmony watched him with those ancient eyes but made no threatening moves. "How did you manage to communicate with her without losing your sanity?" "I spent 3 days just sitting outside her cave, sir. I did not try to enter or make contact. I just sat there and let her get used to my presence. On the 3rd day, she came out to look at me." Maria smiled at the memory. "When she first touched my mind, it was overwhelming. All that sadness and loneliness hit me at once. But I did not fight it or try to block it out. I just accepted it and tried to send back feelings of friendship and understanding. And that worked? Pete asked. It took time, hours of just sharing emotions back and forth. But gradually I started to understand her memories. She showed me what her planet used to be like before the disaster. It was beautiful, sir. Green and full of life, with cities made of crystal and music that you could hear across continents. Harmony made that wind chime sound again, and Maria reached up to touch her gently. She also showed me the disaster, a plague that killed her entire species in just a few months. She survived only because she was young and strong, but she has been alone ever since. Lieutenant Herdock, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. But why did she agree to come with you? Why leave her home planet? Maria's eyes filled with tears. Because she asked me to take her away from there, sir. She said the planet held too many sad memories. She wanted to see if there were others like her in the galaxy, or at least find beings who could understand her. She wiped her eyes and continued. Harmony is incredibly intelligent, sir. She knows about technology, about space travel, about different species. She has been listening to radio signals from across the galaxy for centuries, learning about other civilizations. She just never had a way to contact them safely. Commander Vextal had been quiet throughout Maria's report, but now he stepped forward. Cadet Santos, you are saying that the most feared creature in known space is actually a lonely survivor looking for companionship? Yes, sir. And she wants to help. Harmony knows things about the galaxy that we have never discovered. She can sense the emotions and intentions of other beings from great distances. She can detect lies, hidden dangers, even diseases that have not shown symptoms yet. Pete looked up from his notes. Maria, has she been reading our minds since she arrived? Maria turned to Harmony and seemed to have a silent conversation with the creature. After a moment, she nodded. She says she can sense everyone's emotions right now. Most of you are afraid, but some of you are curious and hopeful. She says Commander Vextal is struggling between fear and duty, but that his heart is good. Vextal's gray skin flushed slightly. She can sense all of that? And more, sir. She says she can feel that Pete Carter has been working very hard to help others understand creatures like her. She is grateful for his efforts. Pete felt a strange warmth in his chest, as if someone had given him a gentle mental hug. Can she communicate with the other creatures here? The ones the cadets have befriended? Maria consulted with Harmony again. She says yes, but in different ways. Midnight the Shadow Maw thinks in pictures and smells. The Crystal Wolves think in pack relationships and territory markers. Whisper the Phase Panther thinks in multiple dimensions that are hard for most beings to understand. And Luna the Void Serpent? Harmony says Luna thinks in music and mathematics. She sees the universe as a giant song that she is trying to learn, all the parts too. Commander Morrison sat down heavily in a nearby chair. So all of these creatures that we classified as dangerous monsters are actually intelligent beings with their own ways of thinking and communicating? Yes, sir. And Harmony says there are many more like them throughout the galaxy. Creatures that have been labeled as threats simply because no one took the time to understand how they communicate or what they really need. The docking bay fell, silent as everyone absorbed this information. The implications were staggering. If Maria and Harmony were right, then the galaxy was full of misunderstood beings that could become allies instead of enemies. Vextal was the first to speak. Cadet Santos, would Harmony be willing to help us develop new protocols for first contact with unknown species? Maria had another silent conversation with the creature. She says she would be honored to help, sir. She has been waiting centuries for the chance to build bridges between different kinds of beings. Pete closed his tablet and looked around at the assembled group. Human cadets standing beside alien creatures that had once been classified as monsters. Officers from different species working together to understand beings they had feared for generations. Commander Vextal, Pete said, I request permission to begin developing new xenobiology protocols based on what we have learned. With Harmony's help and the experiences of our cadets, we can create guidelines for peaceful first contact. that emphasize understanding over confrontation. Vexatal looked at Harmony, who was now lying peacefully on the floor while several young cadets cautiously approached her. The creature's presence seemed to calm everyone around her, replacing fear with curiosity. Permission granted, Lieutenant Commander Carter. It appears we have much to learn about the galaxy we thought we knew. 6 months had passed since Maria Santos returned from Xerion 4 with Harmony, and the Galactic Training Academy looked nothing like it had before. The courtyard that once held only training equipment now resembled a peaceful park where dozens of different species lived and worked together. Commander Jake Morrison stood at his office window watching the morning activities below. Midnight. The Shadow Maw was helping a group of young Xanthari cadets practice their climbing skills, his massive back serving as a safe training platform. The Crystal Wolves patrolled the perimeter with Danny Rodriguez, their keen senses making the Academy more secure than any electronic system ever could. Luna the Void Serpent had wrapped herself around the central tower in a complex pattern that Amy Sullivan was using to teach advanced mathematics. Her serpentine form created geometric shapes that helped students understand three-dimensional space in ways that no hologram could match. Whisper the Phase. Panther moved in and out of visibility as she worked with Ryan Parker to inspect the Academy's infrastructure, her ability to phase through solid matter revealing structural weaknesses that normal scanners missed. And in the center of it all, Harmony the Nightmare Basilisk sat peacefully with Maria Santos, both of them surrounded by cadets from a dozen different species. Harmony was sharing memories and knowledge through gentle telepathic contact, teaching young beings about empathy and communication in ways that no textbook ever could. Jake turned away from the window as his door chimed. Commander Vextal entered, carrying a thick stack of reports. "Good morning, Jake," Vextal said, using the human's first name as he had started doing recently. "I have the latest Academy statistics for you." Jake gestured for Vexatal to sit down. The Xanthari commander looked different than he had 6 months ago. His rigid posture had relaxed, and his large black eyes seemed warmer somehow. "Let me guess," Jake said with a smile. "Another record-breaking month?" "Indeed. We have had 0 training accidents, 0 disciplinary incidents, and 0 equipment failures." Vextal set the reports on Jake's desk. "More importantly, our cadets are scoring higher on empathy and communication tests than any class in Academy history." Jake picked up one of the reports and flipped through it. "What about the new first contact protocols? How are they working out?" "Better than we ever hoped. Pete Carter's new guidelines have been tested on 17 different missions, and every single one resulted in peaceful contact with previously unknown species." Vextal's voice held a note of wonder. 3 of those species have already applied to join the Galactic Alliance. The new protocols were simple but revolutionary. Instead of immediately classifying unknown creatures as threats, contact teams were required to observe behavior patterns, attempt communication, and look for signs of intelligence or distress. Harmony had helped develop telepathic communication techniques that could work with many different types of minds, while the other creatures had contributed their own unique perspectives on nonverbal communication. "And the other academies?" Jake asked. "Have they started implementing the new methods?" "All 12 training facilities across the galaxy have requested copies of our protocols. The Academy on Rigel 7 just reported their first successful peaceful contact with a creature they had been hunting for 30 years. Vextal paused. It turned out to be a highly intelligent being that was trying to protect its young from pollution in the planet's water system. Jake leaned back in his chair. "Sometimes I still can't believe how wrong we were about so many things." "We were not wrong, Jake. We were afraid. And fear makes beings see threats where none exist." Vextal looked out the window at the peaceful scene below. "Your species taught us that understanding requires patience and an open mind. These are not natural traits for most of us, but they can be learned." Their conversation was interrupted by Pete Carter entering the office with a young Corvin cadet named Tech Jean. The cadet looked nervous but excited. "Commanders," Pete said, "I wanted to introduce you to our newest success story. Techjin just completed his first xenobiology mission using the new protocols." Jake gestured for them to sit down. Tell us about it, Cadet. Tech-Jin's mandibles clicked nervously as he spoke. I was sent to investigate reports of a void devil that was supposedly terrorizing shipping lanes near the outer rim. Previous attempts to eliminate the creature had failed, and cargo ships were avoiding the entire sector. And what did you find? Vextal asked. The creature was not attacking ships, sir. It was trying to help them. Tech-Jin's voice grew stronger as he continued. The shipping lane passes through an area with unstable gravitational fields that can trap vessels. The Void Devil was actually guiding ships safely through the dangerous areas. Pete smiled proudly. Tech-Jin spent 3 days observing the creature's behavior patterns before making contact. He discovered that it had been helping ships for over 50 years, but most captains were too frightened to realize what was happening. How did you communicate with it? Jake asked. The creature uses light patterns to communicate, sir. Once I understood this, I was able to use my ship's external lights to send simple messages. It was very eager to talk to someone who could understand it. Tech-Jin paused. Its name translates roughly to Guide of the Dark Paths, and it invited me to stay and learn about the gravitational phenomena in that region. Vextal made notes on his tablet. Did you accept its invitation? Yes, sir. I spent 2 weeks learning from it. The creature has knowledge about space navigation that could revolutionize how we travel through dangerous regions. It has agreed to work with our shipping companies to make the trade routes safer for everyone. After Tech-Jin left, Jake and Vextal sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The transformation of the academy had been remarkable, but the real change was in how people thought about the unknown. Jake, Vextal said finally, I owe you an apology. For what? 6 months ago I wanted to remove all humans from the program. I thought your species was too emotional, too unpredictable. I believed that logic and caution were the only safe approaches to dealing with dangerous creatures. Jake waited for him to continue. I was wrong. Your emotions, your empathy, your willingness to see the best in others, these are not weaknesses. They are strengths that the rest of us desperately needed to learn. We all learned from each other, Jake replied. Your species' analytical skills helped us understand why our empathy works. The Corvin attention to detail helped us develop better observation techniques. The Relon understanding of group dynamics helped us learn how to approach social species safely. Vextal nodded. True cooperation, not just tolerance. Their discussion was interrupted by excited voices from the courtyard below. Jake looked out the window and saw a crowd of cadets gathered around something near the academy entrance. What do you think that's about? He asked. They made their way down to the courtyard where they found cadets from every species excitedly talking to a group of newcomers. At the center of the group was a massive creature that Jake had never seen before. It looked like a cross between a dragon and a butterfly, with iridescent wings that sparkled in the sunlight and gentle eyes that held obvious intelligence. What's happening here? Vextal asked. Lucy Harper stepped forward with a huge smile on her face. Commanders, I'd like you to meet the delegation from the Crystal Nebula region. They heard about our new approach to interspecies communication and came to ask for our help. The dragon butterfly creature spoke in a voice like musical bells. We are the Shimmer people. For generations we have been avoiding contact with the Galactic Alliance because we feared you would see us as threats. But the stories of your academy have reached even our distant worlds. Maria Santos approached with Harmony beside her. Harmony has been in telepathic contact with them for the past month. They're hoping we can help them make peaceful contact with their neighbors in nearby star systems. There are others who need our help too, Amy Sullivan added, walking up with her data tablet. We've received requests from 47 different worlds asking for assistance with creature-related problems. But now, instead of asking us to eliminate threats, they're asking us to help them understand and communicate. Jake looked around at the assembled group. Human cadets working alongside alien officers, all of them surrounded by creatures that had once been classified as monsters. Young beings from dozens of different species learning that the universe was full of friends they had simply not met. Yet, well, he said to Vextal, it looks like we're going to need a bigger academy. Vextal's equivalent of a smile spread across his gray features. I will start making the arrangements immediately. Something tells me this is just the beginning. As the day went on, more reports came in from across the galaxy. The new protocols were spreading faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been enemies for centuries were discovering that their conflicts were based on misunderstandings that could be resolved through patience and genuine communication. The Galactic Training Academy had become something none of them had ever imagined. A place where the first question about any unknown being was not, "How dangerous is it?" but "What does it need?" Where young beings learned that the universe was not full of monsters waiting to hurt them, but full of potential, friends waiting to be understood.